Oh! Oh my! Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't see you there. I was busy being told I should be full of rage about a company that's definitely failing because the models it's releasing are signalling the end of the world. So, there's that. But, you know what? This gives me an idea. Okay, so I don't know about you, but I am so sick of seeing poorly made reviews and hot takes on GW videos that I've been driven to doing something that I personally never thought I would make. This is a product review. Specifically, it's a product review of the new Parasite of Mortrex. And even more specifically to that, this is a video that aims to show how a review should be done. And even further than that, this is the type of format I will continue to do should you guys like it. If you enjoyed this video, then please do leave a like and comment below to let me know that you like it. And do make sure you subscribe to the channel for more Warhipster content like this, should I make some more. That's up to you. Okay, with all of that locked in, let's kick off the review of The Parasite of Mortrex. The Parasite of Mortrex is a new plastic model kit made by Citadel that belongs to the Warhammer 40,000 brand of Games Workshop tabletop war games. Available for £24 RRP, the miniature is made up of 12 components and is supplied with a 40mm round base and comes unpainted. Citadel recommends using their own plastic glue to assemble it and their own Citadel paints to paint it. Now, whilst I would recommend using contrast paints, this isn't strictly necessary as other brands of miniature paint and most plastic glues will probably work. So if you have your favourites, then knock yourself out. The instruction booklet doesn't contain any surprises or any moving parts. It's divided into 5 sections, which, whilst you could consider these to be steps to build, it is actually 12 steps to build on account of there being 12 components. Now, upon inspecting the sprue closely, we can see there is very little in the way of tiny components. In fact, there are none. There's no tail in 3 pieces or weird 6-part wings with a single talon left off for funsies. There are some potentially annoying contact points with some of what I would refer to as outward facing components, such as this claws, arms, talon type things. And of course, we have on top of the head here and the outside of the tail. So do take care when removing these from the sprue by clipping as close as you can as possible. For slightly trickier components, such as this organism that sits on the ground, it's a little tough to clip out cleanly on account of it being a ridged component, and the sprue contact points are in amongst the ridges, so watch out for that one when clipping. You don't want to take the edges off the ridges. Building the model, in my opinion, was reasonably painless. This time-lapse shot is roughly 30 seconds long, and using my powers of scientific deduction and a well-placed stopwatch just off screen showed me that it took roughly 20 minutes to put together. So if your time is valuable as a hobbyist, then this isn't too big of a time sink. You could do this on a lunch break, or you could do this in between chores, for example putting the kids to bed or cooking dinner, you know, normal stuff. In my opinion, however, when building your Parasite of Mortrex, I would add components 11 and 10 to the body before doing 8, 7 and 9, or in descriptive terms, the wings. I built the model following the instructions to the letter, and whilst it was reasonable to do it the way the instructions stated, I think for novice builders or those less dexterous of hand than I, the curvature of the wings makes popping the arms in after they're on a little bit difficult. All in all though, building this huggiest of Tyranids was quite an enjoyable experience, so for you builders out there, you'll find this an absolute doddle. A lack of extra components does mean that the sprue is efficient and you won't have to make any difficult choices in terms of war gear or head options, for example, so that's always a nice bonus. Now, I'm not a converter or kit basher, as you know, really, but the components in this kit are all mostly in one piece. except for one wing, which even then is only missing a tentacle arm. Now, this kit is sure to provide some excellent, albeit limited options for those of you who like to make your own unique models and not follow what the instructions say. Now, let's talk about priming. I went for Wraithbone for a warmer, more organic look, and actually, priming the model was nice and simple. He's got his arms and wings spread out nicely, and all the details are kind of on display, so getting at them with a rattle can was surprisingly easy. Do as I do though and go for nice, short, sharp bursts of the primer, as because he's kind of circular in nature, there's potential for some of the spray to hang around and settle in places you don't want it to. This is a small risk, but like with priming in a box that's too small for priming, you don't want the dust to settle, for example, on the tail, which those wings being shaped as they are can accidentally do if you prime a touch too heavily. Now, as for the painters out there, the Parasite of Mortrex has 5 different colours on it with 4 main textures. These are the wings, the body and the musculature of the wings, the carapace or chitinous armour, and the various little red claws and things scattered about the model. The details are nice and open, so getting your brush around the models is reasonably simple. Sub-assemblies, whilst optional, I didn't at any point think would make the experience any easier, kind of just more of a faff. The trick with this model is to make the chitinous armour look interesting, offering up opportunities for feathering techniques, and the other thing that is most important is making sure that the wing membranes and the body of the model are nice and smooth, whilst also having sufficient shading to make sure you can see everything that's going on with these details. Ultimately, it won't break the bank to paint in terms of battle ready or even parade ready paints required, and does a really nice job of showing off the Tyranid colour schemes. You might opt for, in this case, Leviathan as a practice for doing bigger monsters. The Parasite is an excellent choice. If you'd like to see how I painted my Parasite in the colours of Highfleet Leviathan or the box art, you can check that out in the Contrast Plus tutorial video, How to Paint the Parasite of Mortrex. No review would be complete without a look at the Parasite's datasheet and how it stacks up on the battlefield, of course, so let's do just that. The Parasite of Mortrex is a fast attack choice, so should fit into most lists as it's not fighting for a spot in the HQ roster or the elite slot. Ultimately, its main competition for a spot comes from the Morlock, Raveners or the Trigon, with special mention going to the Mucilid Spores, Spore Mines and Ripper Swarms, although that should be caveated somewhat, as if you really want to take Ripper Swarms, then perhaps a Parasite of Mortrex is a better shout on account of its special rules, but more on that shortly. At 80 points, or power level 4, he's reasonably cheap to field, so doesn't take up a huge amount of space on your roster. Your 80 points buys you a decent stat line with a whopping 16 inches of movement, a weapon skill of 2+, strength 5, toughness 5, 6 wounds, 6 attacks, leadership 8, and an armor save of 4+. The highlight here is that 16-inch movement characteristic, giving you a zippy, fast little model that can sneak onto objectives or reposition at a moment's notice. And this is important for Tyranids, as the Parasite of Mortrex brings some army-specific benefits to the battlefield as well. I'm talking, of course, about Synapse and Shadow in the Warp. Now, without going too much into detail about these specific rules for all you Tyranid fans out there, and all you potential Tyranid fans out there, Synapse is very, very important to your continued existence and success. So aside from being a rapid little bug with a couple of cool Tyranid benefits, what else can he do? I mean, so far he hasn't set the world on fire, right? Now, whilst his strength, AP and damage stats aren't much to write home about, it's in the Parasite's datasheets that things get interesting. With Death from Above, your Parasite of Mortrex can be deployed later in the game rather than the deployment phase anywhere on the battlefield. That is more than 9 inches away from any enemy models, or as it's more widely known, Deep Strike. The Parasite is a Shadow Hunter, which translates to -1 to hit, and the hit rolls cannot be re-rolled, giving him a little more survivability. Whilst not as good as an invulnerable save, this is incredibly powerful as we've seen on units like Be'lakor. Now here's where things get interesting. When the Parasite does damage with its weapon, the barbed ovipositor, if it successfully wounds an enemy excluding a vehicle, that unit suffers an additional mortal wound and becomes infected with parasites. If this happens, then not only does your opponent lose the objective secured ability, your opponent then has to, at the start of their command phase, roll a d6. On a roll of a 1 to 3, the unit suffers d3 mortal wounds and is no longer infected with parasites. On a roll of a 4 to 6, that unit suffers d3 mortal wounds and remains infected with parasites, which is pretty neat. But it gets better. If that unit suffers 2 or more mortal wounds as a result of this ability this phase, set up a new friendly Ripper Swarm within 3 inches of the enemy unit, but not in engagement range. This unit contains 1 model or base, and it does not cost reinforcement points in matched play games. So what does this all mean? Well, the Parasite is a pretty interesting choice. From a competitive standpoint, he's pretty nasty, although not something to base your army around. He can be used to harass weaker infantry units, and generally create a fast, zippy choice that can easily fill gaps in any synapse nets that might open up for your army on the battlefield as a consequence of the enemy firepower. From a rule of cool type angle, the Parasite is awesome. Spawning rippers out of the corpses of the enemy that then grow up and continue the feasting is so thematic it makes me want to weep. From fear. For a little tech piece designed to do little specific tasks throughout a game, the Parasite is an excellent choice. But not an auto take, which is the sweet spot in most codexes, at least in my opinion. So, in conclusion then, should you buy the Parasite of Mortrex? In all honesty, I think, as a hobby piece, whilst not particularly challenging, the Parasite is a good model. For practicing some advanced techniques with the brush, whilst not being a tough model to actually build and paint, it's fairly simple, and it's a lot of fun, and it won't take up hours and hours of your valuable hobby time. From a player's perspective, if you're looking for something to fill a small gap in the army roster, or indeed to add another little tool, or to add some speed, or just to expand your arsenal, then the Parasite of Mortrex is an excellent choice. Now there's an argument to be made that the Death Leaper does the same thing, but better, and whilst that may or may not be true, the Parasite really is a narrative gamer's dream, with a fluffy datasheet and some really thematic rules. So for those of you who like ratings, I have designed a scientific scale called the Land Raider scale, with 1 being the outdated and somewhat derpy looking Razor Gore, and 10 being the perfection that is the Land Raider. On this scale, I would have to give the Parasite of Mortrex a 7.5 out of 10. I knocked off points because, well, I didn't really talk about it in the review, but I would have liked a slightly more thematic base, maybe with a corpse of some such with the rippers bursting out. That would have been interesting, and potentially to include some Ripper Swarm bases in the kit as well, although across the Tyranids range it's not very hard to come across those Ripper Swarms, and if you're adding this to a Tyranids army, you've got Rippers up the wazoo. For me though, as an individual collector, I don't have any Ripper Swarms, which is why you won't have seen any in this video, and I wasn't prepared to buy some from Forge World for the sake of making this. So that's it guys, I hope you enjoyed that one, and if you want to see more of this kind of content, then let me know in the comments or something, or in the emails, or on Twitter, or on Instagram, wherever you want to contact me and tell me that you liked this video, or if indeed you didn't like this video and you think I completely missed the point. If you're after something else to watch, well, this is the first one, so there aren't any other reviews you could watch, but you could watch my painting guide on how to paint the Parasite of Mortrex to support your Parasite of Mortrex painting needs. Thank you so much for watching everybody, I will see you next time, happy wargaming. If you enjoyed this video, you love the channel, and you want to support me further like these legends and bosses on the screen before you, you can do so. Head to patreon.com/warhipster or head to ko-fi.com/warhipster. Alternatively, you can now become a YouTube channel member by heading to the channel page and clicking on the join button just here, just like these absolute bosses have done. And if you just want to shoot me a little thanks, just because you really love this video, you can click on the thanks button just below this video. Don't forget to share it, like it, comment on it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And to make sure you stay up to date, don't forget to click the bell icon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon in the next one. Happy wargaming.